Oh, well, cool. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. So I was reading through your book. So, okay, first off, your Kickstarter is just amazing. I don't know, like how much work you said, how many years went into this particular Kickstarter?
First of all, thank you. But it was about 3 years of work. I started the process of creating that deck in 2017, and worked off and on it until just this year, when it really kicked into full gear in 2020. And I devoted everything I had to it. And so to see the results, I mean, I think as you have experienced, having opened the package, you get everything out of it that I put into it. So I'm really grateful that it's worked out so well.
Yes, definitely one of the best put together Kickstarters, as well as the most freebies. And obviously, we all love freebies.
Right, right.
So that was a great thing. So okay, so you've made a lot of tarot. I just want to kind of go back. So I went to your Amazon profile, and you have basically a tarot, sort of an occultish tarot book back in 2015, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then when was your first tarot, and which tarot was it?
So the first deck that I actually created it's called the Demon Possessed Tarot. And I released that in 2018, but I made it in 2017. I just printed off one copy for myself, and never thinking that I would sell it commercially or really share it with anyone else. I really made it for myself. And a friend of mine saw pictures of it and said, "Man, this is going to make you a fortune. You got to sell this." So he happened to have experience advising Kickstarter projects as like a side job. And he sort of coached me on the process of setting up that first Kickstarter in 2018. And it was a phenomenal success. And that's what I've been doing for a living ever since. This is my full-time job.
Yeah, that is cool. And I know a lot of my viewers are very interested in, like what you're saying. I mean, doing tarot decks, creating tarot decks, navigating Kickstarter, because that obviously, in addition to that being confusing, it's also difficult to know how much of a tarot to make before you go onto Kickstarter. Do you want to make the whole deck first? And if you do and nobody backs it, then you kind of feel that let down and things like that. So your second tarot deck was that, I don't know the order. I know they have the Vlad Tarot. That was a Kickstarter. Now that's coming to Amazon, right?
Eventually, yeah. So the order actually goes, I made the Demon Possessed Tarot first, and then I made the Angel Evoking Tarot, which is sort of a sequel deck to the Demon Tarot. And then I created the Oracle of Heaven and Hell, which merges the demon and the angel on the same card. And then I created the Vlad Tarot, and now the Bosch Tarot.
Wow, you're cranking them out. So you started this in 2018. So why tarot? Like, what brought you into the realm? Do you read, or did you read? And this is something that you always done, or are you just sort of curious about it and you just wanted to merge your art with it?
That itself is kind of an interesting story. It's my personal journey through the tarot. I bought my first deck in 1993. I was 13 years old, and I was just interested in tarot. I didn't know anything about it. And I come from a small town out in the backwoods in Pennsylvania, where people don't really, talk about or care about that kind of thing. And I bought it out of a catalog, and I was just enthralled by the images. It was just a basic Rider-Waite deck. And I never really learned how to read with it, but I tried to intuitively just lay out the cards and figure it out as I went along. And eventually I just sort of put it aside and kind of forgot about it. And in 2013, I decided I wanted to learn a new skill. And I wanted to teach myself how to read cuneiform, which is, of course, an ancient form of Babylonian Mesopotamian writing. And it was too hard to do. You have to have like a PhD to read cuneiform. So I thought, well, I challenged myself to learn a new skill. What the hell am I going to learn? And it just hit me. Hey, I think I'll try to really learn how to read tarot cards. So I bought a deck again, because I had lost that original deck a long time ago, bought a new Rider-Waite deck and really learned what every card meant and challenged myself to be able to throw down a card and just know the meaning. And then the spreads, the Celtic cross and the 3-card spread. and even just a single card answering a question, to really learn all the intricacies of each of those card positions and all that stuff. And then I started reading for just friends and close friends, and really that's all, and family members, I guess, and myself, of course, and developed this passion for it. And I realized I was pretty good at it. And but there was only so much more to explore and so much more to understand. So as time went by, that was 2013, the culmination of my research into tarot and its meanings and everything else was that book that I released in 2015, An Occult Guide to the Tarot.
Well, cool. So the demon possessed, is this something you sort of just enjoy, sort of the occult or that type of thing? Or are you sort of attracted to this? What is your sort of attraction to that, and what are you doing as far as that? Because you said you made like a heaven and hell, and then you had a heaven tarot, and I know you have an angel tarot as well. Are you just
the angel? Well, right, the angel evoking tarot has. Well, we can talk about the new versions of those in a minute, but I do have an attraction to. Now, the word occult really just means hidden, and it really references hidden knowledge, and philosophers and authors and alchemists in the Middle Ages, in the medieval period, they were really interested. They felt like there was unknown, hidden knowledge that they could uncover. And their works, their books that they've created became these grimoires of ancient knowledge. And some of it is really just bullcrap. And some of it is this really interesting insight into humanity, into the way numbers function in the universe, sort of a rudimentary form of physics. And all that stuff together is considered occult knowledge. And yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I have this addiction for learning things and for knowing secrets. I don't know why I have that in me, but I do. I can't stand to have secrets kept from me. So I viewed this as like the universe trying to keep secrets from me, figure out what all of them really mean. So that's my attraction to occult knowledge and wisdom.
So you have the angel tarot that's on Amazon that I'm seeing now. You said that is a rebirth of the other one you said?
It is. It's considered a re-release. So here's what happened. In 2019, I went to this psychic fair. I used to go to it every year as just a participant, just a casual guest. It's in Los Angeles. It's called the Conscious Life Expo, or Life Conscious Expo. It's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of interesting people there, and it's a humongous event. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people show up to this thing. So that year I decided, hey, I'll get a booth. It's only like $800 or something. Why not? And set up my demon possessed tarot, and maybe people will buy it, but I just want to meet people, And I happened to meet a guy named Paul who runs a company called Rockpool Publishing in Australia. They're actually one of the biggest publishers of tarot cards and mind, body, spirit books in Australia. And he saw my deck. He just took one look at my deck that I had printed myself and said, I want to buy the rights to this. And that's what every author wants to hear, especially basically a first-time author. So we negotiated a deal for the Demon Possessed Tarot and the Angel Evoking Tarot, which had not even been released yet. But Rockpool basically bought the rights to both those decks. And so what they did was they changed the design to make it more commercial friendly. They removed a little bit of the esoteric language that I used in my version of the guidebook, and then repackaged them and sent them out around the world. And the first time I ever saw them on the shelves in Barnes and Noble, I started crying. I couldn't help it. To see my decks there on the shelf in Barnes and Noble was just overpowering for me.
Well, that is really cool. So what are some of the biggest lessons that you have? So from starting way back 2018 to today, what are some of your biggest lessons? In other words, some of your biggest things that you've learned about making tarot or designing tarot, getting it ready to go and things like that.
So the number one thing that I would say to anyone who is interested in creating their own tarot deck would be create the tarot deck that you want to have, the deck that you wish existed that nobody else has made before. Don't just, some people try to make a quick buck by like creating a Rider Waite knockoff and they fail miserably, or maybe they make a little bit of money, but don't do that because that's wasting everyone's time and money. Think of an original idea that nobody's done before and that you really want to see. And then, because what that does is it drives your passion to create the deck, whether or not anybody will buy it. You will be happy with the outcome of it. And if you're an artist, it doesn't cost you anything to create that art. It takes time, but if you're an artist, you should enjoy that process anyways. Mm-hmm. So I would advise that you do sit down and create the whole deck, because that gives you an opportunity to work out the kinks of the deck before you present it to the general public. And they're seeing a finished product ready to be purchased, ready to be used by them. So so to answer your sort of original question, yes, I think that a tarot artist should make the whole deck and then present it to the public.
Well, that's cool. So you came from your original deck. You've had a lot of experience. You've had a lot of sort of knowledge as far as creation, distribution, getting things out, sort of organizing this. So why Bosch? So when you went to do your next deck, you're like, I need to think of the next deck. Why did you trend towards Bosch?
That was the first deck I ever wanted to create. I stumbled on making a demon-possessed tarot deck. That was an accident. I sat down on my couch with my laptop in front of me and tried to manipulate the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch to create a tarot deck out of it. And it was a disastrous experience. The paintings are humongous image sizes. It takes a special kind of computer to work with them in a meaningful way.
Wow.
And the paintings are also 500 years old. So a lot of them need to be cleaned up and changed and modified so that they could fit on a tarot card and actually look good. And I didn't have the resources to do that or the know-how. So that was actually my original intention 3 years ago, to make that deck. And just now in 2020, 3 years later, I finally had the skills, the high caliber computer that was able to process those images, and the Photoshop skills to go in and actually manipulate the images and make them look good on a card. But Bosch was something I had wanted to work with forever, because I think his work is so beautiful. As you can attest to it, you look at those images and you're seeing something almost from another world, but it also feels like it's something that comes from within us. This hidden element of human psychology that Bosch has somehow put out on a canvas. So to capture those and apply the rules and the structure of the tarot to it was something I had wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you created sort of a new system. And before I want to talk about the system, I got cracked up by your first sentence in the Major Arcana in the book. Any tarot author who dares reorder or rename the cards. So I assume there's some history behind this. Did you get a lot of grief from doing this in the past?
No, but I have given other tarot authors grief in the past, and I've seen other tarot authors get grief in the past. And the problem with changing the Major Arcana cards or the Minor Arcana, switching it around, is that 90% of the time it just doesn't work. The author is trying to cram their theme into the tarot, and they just don't fit. For example, it's probably isn't a good example because it's a real deck that exists. But let's say you had a deck that had cats as mermaids, and you decide, I need to cram this into the system of tarot. But it doesn't really fit. So you might change some of the names of some things to make it more relevant to cats or more relevant to mermaids. And by the time you've done that, you've lost that essential element of what makes the tarot the tarot. Aleister Crowley did an excellent job. His Book of Thoth Tarot is considered one of the pinnacles of tarot creation. Mm-hmm. And he went through and changed a lot of names of cards, but that's because he understood the core meanings behind those cards. So he sort of had the authority to go in and make those changes. And that's why nobody really gave him any help for that. And I felt like for me, after 7 years basically of, and really longer than that, because I started in 2013, almost 20, 30 years of intense study of the tarot, I finally had the authority to make those changes.
Yeah, that's really cool. So so you came into the tarot with the plan of this new organization, or did Bosch sort of inspire and sort of speak through into this new sort of level that you came into with?
That is exactly it. I came into it with the idea I'm going to cram Bosch's images into my idea of the tarot. But as I was doing that, Bosch spoke through his artwork and basically told me, no, here's the way we're going to do it. And I credit Bosch with creating the system for the minor arcana, saying these are the symbols that are relevant to my art that he uses over and over and over again. You see, and some of those are contemporary with tarot. You see swords, you see coins, you see cups over and over again. But there's other things like berries and birds and books. And these had meaning to people living in the Middle Ages and in medieval times. Those were all symbols that they understood and that had meaning to them. But those symbols have lost their meaning to us in the present. So what I had to do was, okay, go back and look in 1400s and 1500s literature and say, what the hell do these things mean? Why are all these birds in Bosch's work? Mm-hmm. And why are books everywhere and things like that? To figure out what they meant and then apply them to this tarot system that Bosch and I combined and came up with together.
That's really cool. So what took the 3 years? You said it took 3 years to do this. Was this more a planning thing, or was this, are you talking about you needed a better computer? You were just sort of trying to figure out what went where and how to organize the cards and whatnot. Like what was the main component that took the 3 years?
So the biggest component was skill with manipulating the images. I just did not have I'm not professionally trained as a graphic designer. I have basically been self-taught while in Photoshop, and I just didn't have the skill to appropriately manipulate those images the way that I knew they needed to be absolutely perfect. And finally, after developing 5 or 4 tarot decks, I finally had that skill set, and I felt like I was ready to take another stab at the project.
Well, that's cool. So, how was this different than your other tarot? In other words, what different situations did you run into here versus your previous ones, or what new things did you sort of encounter with this, or what made this deck unique to this particular project?
Well, I would say the biggest thing was the images were already created. I didn't have the luxury of saying, like, for example, with the Vlad Dracula tarot, all those were created by an artist who I hired to make those specific images on my instructions. So I couldn't say, hey, I want this guy to be holding 7 sticks so I can have a 7 of wands. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like that. I had to find the images that already existed and build out the meaning around them, which was really, I think, the way a tarot deck should be created. You look at the image and the image gives you its meaning. That's why you can read with this deck. You don't necessarily even need the book. It's pretty intuitive. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, the Vlad is coming out. It says soon. It was like next year. Is that, from your answer earlier, is that delayed, or is that going to be something that actually does come out next year?
No, it's definitely coming out next year. So that's another version. I did the original on Kickstarter, and then Rockpool Publishing immediately bought the rights to it. And so they've sort of done a redesign. They actually had me go in and colorize all the cards, because the cards were originally done as black and white woodcuts. And they wanted me to go through and basically paint every single card, which took me like 2 months to do. And again, my Photoshop skills are all self-taught. But hey, the colorization came out great. The cards look really good. And so that's their version of the Vlad Tarot, yeah.
When you say colorization, the images on Amazon are still black and white, I think, with a little splash of red here and there. Are the images accurate?
No, that's not going to be the final version. So what they do is our distributor, who is a pretty big mind, body, spirit publisher called Red Wheel Wiser, they actually put that up based on the original promotional images that Rockpool gives them. And those images were dated to, I think, July. And then in September, they called me and said, hey, can you colorize all the cards? I said, I'm getting ready to run another Kickstarter here, but sure, I'll take a month and do that for you.
That's cool. I need to get those images. Could you mind if, do you have those images, or can I get those images from somewhere?
I do. I can send them to you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I want to put that on my news program. I do tarot news every 2 weeks. And so I think that would be good, because if something's not accurate on Amazon, I mean, it kind of affects people's pre-order. You know, I really don't tend to pre-order this type or that type. And if it's way, way off, which you're saying it is, then I'd like some images so I could at least get you some ads going there. So what's next after the Vlad? So you got the Vlad coming out, and what are you currently working on now?
So for the past year almost, it's been about a year now, I've been working on a deck called Magicians, Martyrs, and Madmen. And it's a tarot deck that each picture is a sort of notorious person from history. And some of them are notorious and some of them are really nice. Like there's also saints and religious martyrs, but there's also madmen and murderers and all kinds of people. And the whole deck is based on them. And each persona is given a specific card. And I have a great artist in Venezuela who has been painting original paintings of each and every persona. You know, I just give her the instructions and she makes them and then sends me the finished image. So the deck is done. Every single painting has been finished and the deck is all organized. I'm just now in the process of writing the book that will go with it. And it's going to be a big book because it's got biographies for 78 people. It's a lot of work. You know, it's a lot of work. But what that deck is going to do is you'll see familiar faces like Aleister Crowley is in there, and Jack the Ripper, and Queen Mary of England, and a few other people that are really well known throughout history. But there's these other obscure occultists or witches or magicians from the past that people really don't know very much about. You might not even recognize the name. And it's going to give you more information about them. You're going to say, wow, holy cow, this person lived like in the same state where I live now. I can actually go to where they practice their magic. And even though they've been dead for whatever, 110 years or whatever it might be. So it's going to give you an opportunity to learn about people from history while also almost channeling their energy in this deck.
That's really cool. And that's the card that you included with the Bosch, right? I have a 10 of Pentacles, Helen Duncan.
Yeah, Helen Duncan. Yeah, she was, do you know anything about her? She was a medium from the early 1900s. I think she died around 1945 or 1950. And she was like nuts. You gotta read her story. She would make ectoplasm come out of her nose, and it was just like cheesecloth that she had somehow stuck down her sinus cavity and would pull out as soon as the lights were out and make people think it was a ghost. So she made a fortune on this. That's why she's got the money, 10 coins coming out of her nose.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see something coming out of her nose. Yeah, I thought those sort of look like buttons at first. But now that you actually say it's coins coming out of her nose, I'm just like, okay, that's because you do see something coming out of her nose. It's just not clear that it was 10 pennies. That's really wild. Yeah, magic has a lot of that. I mean, you have Wayne Houchin has a trick where he pulls string from his eye, and he puts it in his mouth and he pulls it out through his eye. It's obviously not legitimate. I mean, you know, it's sort of jammed into the thread is jammed into his eye, etc. But yeah, there's a lot of that throughout history. He goes through the history of that and some of the other tricks that are sort of like that. That's really cool. And that's the deck I think that people really enjoy, is something that has a lot of meat, a lot of beef to it. So it's not just a 10 of Pentacles. It's something that has a lot more in meaning that we can go research. And like you're talking about, your book will give a biography. So now when I pull out the 10 of Pentacles, I have a lot more than just the base meaning of that card that I can pull from during a reading. And I think that's one of the key points to when you're shopping for tarot, to find one of those that has a lot of extra meaning that you can pull into.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I try to have that kind of added meaning and multiple layers and mysteries for people to discover in every deck I create. It's like, I like to think that's my signature.
Yeah, that's good. That's extremely valuable. I mean, you look at the fairy tale decks and whatnot. I mean, even the Tarot of the Divine, which is the 2020 version of sort of the fairy tale deck. I think it's Russian fairy tales. But yeah, again, that's one of those things that you can go and you can read. It just has a lot of extra meaning to it, so it has a lot of depth. And as a tarot reader, again, you can go with the Ten of Pentacles and just say, hey, it's the Ten of Pentacles. Let me go with my base meaning of what I know. And then once you have some extra time, you can start reading up and getting a little more depth to the card. So what you're doing is very valuable, I think, for the community.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I think every tarot deck should not just present the meaning of the tarot in a different way, but it should add its own little meaning to each card as well. It's got to preserve that old meaning and give you a little something new. Otherwise, what's it really bringing to the table?
Exactly. So are you going to have as many bonuses on this Kickstarter as you had on the last one?
Well, I'll tell you what. So I'm going to disclose a little insider information about my company here. The stretch goal items to get all of those created cost me $15,000. I don't think I'll be doing quite this many on the next one. There were stretch goal items that people really liked and that were meaningful, and I'll keep those. And some of the other ones will not be being created again. For example, those masks. I originally priced them at like $1.50 a piece, and they ended up costing me $5,000 for those masks. So that was way over budget.
So $5,000, did you just print I know you had 1,500 something backers. Did you just print that many, or did you just go ahead and print 2K, 5K of these? I mean, how far out did you go?
I always try to print a few extra, just in case, there's always defects in a pack. You never know. But also, some people might have asked for two, or like sometimes people do add-ons and they want like extra boxes or extra bags or whatever. So yeah, I usually do at least 200 extra on top of what I actually need for the project.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, the mask was really nice. So I love the mask, and the pin is not like a standard pin that you get with a Kickstarter. This is hefty. I mean, you could knock someone out with this thing. This is huge.
So that one actually was on me. I think I wanted a pin that was like 1.5 inches across, and they took it as like 1.5 inches diameter. It was. So it's about twice the size that I expected it to be, but that's okay. The company I work with is great, and I've used them for pins for other things, and I like them a lot. So whatever, I just let it go. You guys get the good pin.
Yeah, this is good. This pin is huge. I love it, and the cloth is so cool. I'm obsessed with cloths. I mean, if you've seen the tarot that I'm making and whatnot, I'm kind of obsessed with cloths because it seems like a lot of the cloths are just a single color with a little bit of a design on it, and you just went all out, and I absolutely adore this cloth. I mean, it has a lot of pictures. It's nice, it's big, it's well made. I think everything's great about this cloth that you included with this.
And it ties in perfectly with the deck because it's got the 7 deadly sins on it, and there are cards for the 7 deadly sins, so you can actually see how they fit in with Bosch's original painting. I credit Bosch with making such an awesome, perfect piece of artwork that I was able to translate into a cloth. And it's my first time ever making a tarot cloth, and I am so pleased with the results, and everyone who's got it loves it. My mom, she backs all my Kickstarters, and she's framing this and hanging it on the wall.
It would look good on the wall, man. I mean, again, you really knocked it out of the park. I mean, in so many different ways. Again, talking about the quality of the deck is just amazing. The Kickstarter bonuses were amazing. And the other thing, I'm sort of obsessed with claws because I think Ciro Marchetti makes a beautiful claws, but there's nobody that really competes or that nobody comes to that sort of a standard. I'm not saying this is the same level, but this is a beautiful, beautiful cloth. It's not just one pattern, something simplistic. It has a lot of depth to it. It has a lot of things that you can sort of get out of that. So if this is your first shot, you knocked it out of the park on the first try.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have very high standards for anything that I send out to my backers. When I receive it, I need to open the box and say, holy cow, I'm so impressed by this. It's amazing. And when the company sent me the sample of the cloth, I opened it and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I knew that my backers would appreciate it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're doing a cloth for your next one, you said?
I will, yeah, I'll do it. Definitely. The cloth is pretty cost effective to make. And the other thing is they don't really raise the cost of my shipping cost. Because if I put too many things in a box, the cost of shipping goes up. And now I'm, over a barrel on that. So I got to be careful about weight of add-ons and free stuff that goes in the box. But no, the cloth is light enough and it's easy enough to pack in a package that, yeah, I'll definitely do those for the future. And because they're beautiful.
Yeah. And another thing that I've started to really like in Kickstarters is a hardbound versus a softbound book. Some creators offer that, especially when you have, like you're talking about with the magicians, you have all these beautiful stories and this history behind it. And so people love to get a good book, sit down on the couch with it and just sort of read it, outside of a reading situation where they can just sort of recreational reading almost. Are you going to have a softbound and a hardbound, or how's the book going to look?
Yep. Yeah, so I do that with every project. I always have a softbound, a hardbound, and then I also like to do some kind of a limited edition version of a book. So on the Bosch project, I had a leather-bound version of the book called the Boschian Bestiary, and that went for $500, and it sold out instantaneously. I only had 10 copies made. They're all spoken for. And that's a book you can just sit down and read it, and it sort of takes you on this journey through the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch. It's very, very cool. And I'm going to do a similar thing with the Magicians, Martyrs, and Madmen. There's going to be the tarot guide version of the book, and then also just a normal book where you can sit down and read it and learn about all these historical people. That's
going to be amazing, man. That is really going to be amazing. Yeah, you run you run a tight ship on the Kickstarter. I know everybody in the video comments are going to ask, what sign are you? We got to know, are you a Virgo or?
It's very funny. Anybody who knows me in person pretty much guesses my sign within the first couple hours of knowing me. I'm actually a Gemini. I'm pretty wishy-washy in real life. I go from one extreme to the other a lot, and I don't hold grudges. I get mad quick, but then I'm happy in the next 20 minutes. Yeah, I'm actually a Gemini. I'll tell you, it's interesting you mentioned that because I had a shift in my whole personality in 2017 after I made that first tarot deck, the Demon Possessed Tarot. I did a reading with that deck, and it was a reading/ritual. And after that, I had this shift in my personality that I can't explain, and neither can anybody else. I basically accessed the mathematical parts of my consciousness. And that's when I started my own business, and I started developing these abilities to understand logistics and operational values and stuff like that I could never do before. And so I attribute, my occult learnings and my occult knowledge to actually really changing my life for the better. Because before then, I could work at a place for a couple of years and get anxious and want to quit, or be with a partner for a couple of years and I got to get out of here. I got to move on to somebody else, and that was just sort of the way I lived my entire life. And then I experienced that dramatic shift in my mentality, and my life has been stable and steady ever since.
That is too cool. That is awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you being on and all that. For anyone watching the video, the link in the description for Travis's Kickstarter profile. Be sure to follow him and webpage as well.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.